What is going on, guys? Welcome to my mass Dagannoth King killing video where I am going to set out to see how much you can actually make at the Dagannoth Kings in 2018. So this video is going to be laid out exactly the same way as my 1000 Vorkath kills video, and if you haven't seen that, there is a card popping up on the screen right now. You can go check that out if you have some time and want to see how much you can make at Vorkath. But it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to go through and see how many kills that I could average per trip, how much my average trip time, and what all my average supply costs were. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into it. So first thing I'm going to bring up here is the gear setup that I decided to go with. So for my 1500 Dagannoth Kings, I ended up going with the Serpentine Helm because you can constantly get poison there, and the Serpentine Helm protects you from poison at all times. Fire Cape, Amulet of Fury, Unholy Blessing, Abyssal Tentacle, Bandos Chestplate and Tassets, Dragon Defender, Barrow's Gloves, Guardian Boots, and a Ring of Suffering imbued. As for my inventory, I have a 4-way range switch with an Armadillo Chestplate and Chain Skirt, Toxic Blowpipe, and Ava's Assembler. For my magic switch for Rex, just a Trident of the Swamp and a Cult Necklace, and I also have a rune pouch which has Death Runes and Blood Runes in it for the Blood Blitz spell for some extra healing. Super Combat Potion, Ranging Potion, 12 Prayer Potions, 3 Anglerfish, 2 doses of Stamina for the run there, a Pet Rock which you will need to get inside if you are alone, 1 Rune Throwing Axe to break down the walls, and a Construction Cape in place of Teleport to House Tablets in case that's what you have and you don't have a Construction Cape. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit of explanation on my gear and inventory. So I went with the Serpentine Helm instead of Sanfew Serums, which most people typically take, because it's just less bothersome to have to worry about drinking a Sanfew Serum or timing it right to use it when you're poisoned, etc. blah blah. I ended up going with Guardian Boots and a Ring of Suffering because of the little Spinolips all around the edge that constantly range and mage you and deal damage. So the Guardian Boots and the Ring of Suffering really take that down, and it really makes you have to worry about your HP a lot less. As for the inventory, I went with 12 Prayer Potions because they are the cheaper alternative to Sanfew Serums and Super Restores. But if you would rather do it the other way, by all means you can. As for the Anglerfish, I took those as a little insurance policy, just in case I missed a prayer switch or I wasn't paying attention. It's just a little HP just in case I need it. And it also helps me have just a few available inventory spaces for drops in case I get too many early in the trip and I can't pick them up. I can just eat some Anglerfish, and have that drop space available. Now with this setup here, eventually I would have basically 5 free inventory slots as I drop the Pet Rock, the Rune Throwing Axe gets used, and the Anglerfish eventually get eaten. So this is my ideal gear setup, and it worked out very, very well. Now when you're planning to go and kill a bunch of Dagannoth Kings, you're going to use a lot of different stuff. There's a lot of different supplies and items that you really have to consider using when you're going for DK trips. Now as for me, I went ahead and took 10 different trips throughout all 1500 kills, and I spread these trips out so I could get more accurate reading of what I'm actually using, and I took those 10 trips and divided them up to get an average supply used per trip. So as for my trips, my average trip time was about 1 hour and 8 minutes, and I ended up with 78 kills on average for each one of those trips, and that's 26 full rotations. Now that might be a little on the low side, but it's probably because I use Piety, Rigor, and Augury on every single kill, so I kind of go through my prayer potions a lot faster. Now you don't have to do this, and you can extend your trips pretty nicely, but as for me, I wanted to get more kills per hour in, so I decided to go with the stat boosting prayers. Now like I said earlier, you do use a lot of different stuff here, and that's because you're fighting 3 different bosses, each representing one part of the combat triangle. So you're gonna need mage, melee, and range on you at all times if you're tri-Bridding. Some people choose to just AFK kill Rex, and that's fine, but I think it's definitely a lot more worth your time if you tri-Brid it, kill all 3 of them, and just try to get as much as you possibly can. So as for the supplies that I used, I ended up using blowpipe scales in 3 different spots, one with the toxic blowpipe, one with the serpentine helm, and one with the trident of the swamp. So I definitely used a lot of scales per trip. All in all, I ended up using just under 1,750 scales per trip, but instead of going through each one, I'm going to group them up with the weapon used rather than just separately, just so we get a better idea of the cost per weapon. So first up is the toxic blowpipe, and I did use rune darts in the toxic blowpipe. Now you don't have to use rune darts, adamant will work just fine, but in terms of keeping up with the rotation times, I definitely thought rune was the better option. So I ended up averaging 531 blowpipe scales and 150 rune darts per trip, which brought me to a total supply cost for the blowpipe to 302,157 GP. Up next is going to be the Trident of the Swamp, and each cast of this Trident requires 1 Chaos Rune, 1 Death Rune, 1 Zulrah Scale, and 5 Fire Runes. On average, I used 384 Trident casts per trip, which was a total value of 241,152 GP. And last was the Serpentine Helmet, and on my 1 hour and 8 minute average trip, I ended up using about 826 Zulrah Scales in that per trip, which came to a total cost of 204,022 GP. As for the rest of the supplies, it's more or less miscellaneous items. I ended up using Blood Blitz to heal up a little bit when I needed it, and I averaged 76 Blood Blitzes per trip, which was 124,184 GP. I took 1 combat set, which was a super combat potion and a ranging potion, which ended up costing me 17,068 GP per trip. 12 prayer potions was 118,620 GP per trip. And 3 anglerfish at 5,373 GP per trip. Now, all of this stuff added up ended up costing me 1,014,335 GP in supplies alone per trip. Now, to me, already that number right there for doing some Dagannoth Kings is not looking very good, but I'll let you decide once we get to the total loot. Before we get into the loot, I do want to say this. I've tried the Dagannoth Kings very many different ways, but I feel like this is actually my favorite setup that I've ever gone with. It's a really chill setup to do these bosses with. It doesn't really take that much paying attention, aside from when you have to switch your gear, run to the next location for the spawn. But if you've never done Dagannoth Kings before, you can definitely do it like this as a first timer. It's really easy to get the hang of, considering each boss only uses 1 combat style. There aren't any special mechanics with the Dagannoth Kings that you have to learn. So if you really want to try it out, go ahead and try it this way. I really believe that this is the easiest way that it can be done. Alright, so let's go ahead and get that loot up on the screen. So here you go, 1,500 Dagannoth King kills, and that is 500 of each particular Dagannoth King killed. Now, I did end up getting pretty lucky with the Berserker rings, but hey, that can happen to anybody. And you can see there, I do have the noted bones, and if you didn't know, completing the Fremenic Elite Diary will give you noted Dagannoth bone drops. So here we go. I ended up getting a pretty good amount of unique items. 3 Seers rings, 6 Berserker rings, 5 Archer rings, 3 Warrior rings, 7 Seer Kulbos, 2 Mud Staffs, and 4 Dragon Axes. Now, obviously, I'm not very happy about the Dragon Axes because they aren't worth crap anymore, but they come along with the Dagannoth King, so you kind of have to accept that you're going to get them. Now, I did try to pick up absolutely every single thing that I possibly could when I had room for it. Ended up with 20 water battle staffs, 14 air, and 36 earth, as well as 39 normal battle staffs. Now, if you're going to pick up any of the talismans, I definitely suggest you always pick up the earth talismans, because I ended up getting 2,500 of them, which was an extra almost 600k onto my loot, so that really helps out. As for some of the other stuff, it's really just low value items that the Dagannoth King drop. It's really only worth it to go there for the unique drops. They don't have a great table otherwise. They do have a chance of hitting the rare drop table 1 in every 16 kills, which is pretty low, but there's not really anything too impressive on the rare drop table anymore. You can see I did get 3 Dragon Med Helms, which are only around 60k each. 4 dragon stones, a bunch of crystal keys, or rather they were half keys at one point, and Dagannoth Supreme does drop U-logs every now and then. I did get 1,500 of those. But as for my total loot, ended up being 66,447,174 GP. So what kind of numbers am I looking at now? How much did I make per trip? How much profit did I make per trip? And what was my income per hour? Now, it ended up taking me 20 trips to finish all 1,500 kills. So I'm going to base my numbers off of my total number of trips. So with that 66.446 mil, I ended up making 3,322,358 GP as a gross value per trip. Now my supply costs from earlier per trip were 1,014,335 GP, which ended up bringing me to a total profit per trip of 2,308,023 GP. But we still have to break that down a little bit further because I ended up staying for an average of 1 hour and 8 minutes, which is just a little over an hour. So with a little bit more math, I ended up making a total profit per hour of 2.03 million GP. But what if you don't have the Fremennik Elite Diaries done? Is this still worth it? Well, don't worry, I did the math for that too. So without the Fremennik Elite Diaries, you're obviously not going to have all those bones in your loot either, which that brought my total down to 53,396,335 GP. Now this brought my total gross value per trip down to 2,669,816 GP, and since we're still doing the same thing, the supply cost is going to remain the same, which further drops my profit per trip to 1,655,481 GP. Now, throwing in the other math with that, this ended up averaging me 1.46 million GP per hour without the Elite Diaries, without the Dagannoth bones. So at the end of all this, I ended up personally making 2,036,000 GP per hour with the Elite Diaries done. Had I not had the Elite Diaries done, 1,460,000 GP per hour. Now the Elite Diaries, they are a little bit steep with the requirements. It does require 82 rune crafting, but if you can stand the time to actually get them done, I would definitely say doing the Elite Diaries is most definitely worth it. Over 2 million GP per hour at the Dagannoth Kings is definitely worth it in my book. Now you'll have to remember here that this is what you could make. It's not definitely guaranteed as to what you will make, because Dagannoth Rex does drop the Berserker Ring as well as the Warrior Ring, and the Warrior Ring is only worth around 100k, while the Berserker Ring is up in the 3.5 million GP range. So it really depends on your RNG and how lucky you are. If you get a decent amount of drops, you could see profit like mine, you could see lower profit, but overall, I think it's still definitely going to be worth your time to come here, camp for a little while if you need some cash, and definitely always do the Dagannoth Kings if you're trying to make the most money from the Slayer skill. But hey, that is going to wrap up this video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it. I want to thank those of you that actually requested this on my Vorkath video down in the comments. That's where I got the idea from this video. Some other requests that have floated in are 1,000 Barrows chests, which I am currently working on at the time of this video release. And shortly after I finish 1,000 Barrows chests, I am going to be on to 1,000 King Black Dragon kills. So I want to thank you guys again for requesting stuff. Gives me something to do, gives me content to put out. And because you guys are requesting stuff, obviously that means you are enjoying it. So thank you. But if you like this video, please go ahead and leave a thumbs up down below. They really do help the video's popularity. And if you haven't done so yet, please go ahead and tap that subscribe button on your way out. All of your support to my channel really means a lot to me. If you haven't done so yet, also check out my Patreon page, which you can pledge to keep my channel up and running and help support all of my RuneScape shenanigans. So if you need that link, it is also down in the description. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Until next time, take it easy.